The narrative begins by following Takeru, a salaried worker who returns home after another tiring day. He sits in front of the TV, feeling the weight of the repetitive routine that never changes. As soon as he turns on the device, his eyes fix on a program completely unknown to him. While watching the figure that appears on the screen, something strange happens. The lenses of his glasses emit an intense glow, and in an instant his body is transported to an unknown place. In this new environment, Takeru comes across the same man he had seen in the program. The man introduces himself as the solar system manager of that world. To demonstrate his power, he creates in front of Takeru's eyes a miniature planet called Madeus, balanced on the tip of his finger. He then explains that regardless of the changes made, the civilizations that inhabit that planet always end up collapsing. With a simple gesture, the manager pours a drop of water onto Madeus and comments that even a small alteration can completely transform the destiny of that world. It is this same impact that Takeru will have when being sent there. The revelation leaves Takeru stunned, unable to believe that such a great responsibility has been placed on his shoulders. Shortly after, the man reveals an even more shocking truth. Takeru has already died, and if he does not accept going to Madeus, his soul will disappear forever. Desperate, Takeru realizes he has no choice. The manager then reassures him, saying he will grant him special abilities to help him in this new life. He grants Takeru extraordinary magical potential and asks if he wants anything else. Then, Takeru makes an unusual request. He would like to have charming companions by his side. The manager accepts the wish and also adds an identification ability, which will allow him to identify materials to sell and earn money. After noting down other advantages, the man gives Takeru a magic bag capable of storing everything he collects. In addition, he grants him knowledge of the local language and several resistances that will facilitate his survival. Suddenly, Takeru's body begins to slowly disintegrate before his eyes. The manager realizes he probably went too far in granting so many abilities and comments that the time for reincarnation had already come. Upon noticing who will be by Takeru's side in his journey, he becomes apprehensive but assures him that everything will be fine. Takeru grows restless with those last words, but his vision darkens until it completely fades. When he awakens, he is already leaning against the trunk of a tree in the world of Madeus. Looking up, he sees an unknown planet shining in the sky. Takeru stands up, determined to find signs of other people. After walking for a while, he discovers a small village. Concern quickly arises. He has no money. Then he remembers the identification ability and decides to test it. He concentrates, but nothing happens. Thinking he may have pronounced it wrong, he tries writing the word on the ground. As soon as he says search, the identification magic activates and shows various materials scattered around. He approaches one of the plants and the analysis reveals that it is a B-rank specimen. Excited at having found something valuable right away, he starts collecting all the resources shining in his vision. However, the excitement diminishes when he realizes most of them are classified as level E. Still, among them he finds a stone with a beautiful appearance, but the ability reveals that it is nothing more than monster feces. The shock increases when he discovers that this poop, in fact, has a C rank. Even though surprised, he stores everything in his magic bag and heads to the village, curious to find out the value he will get by selling the materials. At the entrance, he encounters a drowsy guard. The man is startled by Takeru's height and asks if he is a warrior or a swordsman. Takeru replies that he is only there to sell some materials. The guard then introduces himself as Marlowe, a member of the Tormy village patrol. Marlowe opens the way through the gate and explains that there is no store specialized only in materials, but there is a general goods store where he can sell his collection. Upon entering, Takeru feels the weight of the villagers' curious looks. Already inside the establishment, the shopkeeper greets him and asks what he needs. Takeru decides to ask if it is possible to sell monster feces. The shopkeeper immediately becomes excited, recognizing the material as hammer anteater poop. He says he can pay 5 silver coins for the item. Not quite understanding its value, Takeru asks how much a night in an inn costs. The shopkeeper explains that the daily rate costs 500 raves and that 1 silver coin equals 1,000 raves. Surprised, Takeru accepts the price with satisfaction. The merchant, thrilled, even rubs the material on his face and asks if he brought more things. Takeru then hands over the herbs he collected. The shopkeeper is impressed with the quality and asks why someone with such skill is selling materials in such a remote village. Takeru replies that he usually travels and takes the opportunity to collect what he finds along the way. Then, the shopkeeper makes him a proposal. He asks him to go to the eastern mountain in search of mithril ore. Takeru asks if there is a local map, and the shopkeeper confirms there is. Before closing the deal, the merchant offers 360,000 raves for all the materials Takeru brought, which leaves him completely surprised. Still, the shopkeeper warns him. The mountain region is dangerous and infested with monsters. Later, Takeru heads to an inn and rents a room. A maid enters carrying a bowl with hot water, explaining that he can use it to clean himself. Intrigued, Takeru asks where he could take a bathtub bath. The young woman explains that only nobles have this privilege. She further adds that she has heard that mages are capable of cleaning people using magic, but in the village there are none available. Excited to try it on his own, Takeru takes the basin, gives the girl a generous tip, and after being left alone, begins to chant magical words. When he pronounces clean, jets of water form and surround his body, performing a true magical purification. The relief of being clean is immediate, but he still feels frustrated at not having experienced a real bathtub bath. The next day, he sets out toward the eastern mountain, taking the opportunity along the way to collect more herbs. During his walk, he finds the symbol of the sword suit marked in a spot. Upon investigating, he discovers scattered bones and soon realizes they are the remains of a fallen warrior. With respect, he picks up an amulet that held a letter. After reading its contents, he builds a grave and offers a silent prayer. As night falls, he raises a protective barrier and prepares a vegetable stew with meat for his meal. As soon as the stew finishes cooking, Takeru tastes it and is surprised by the flavor, finding it delicious. After eating, he decides to head toward the Forest of White Trees, a place also known as the Forest of Ancestral Dragon. Knowing that he might encounter dangerous creatures there, Takeru casts a light spell to protect himself. The beam illuminates the surroundings and reveals the presence of several herbs scattered around, but no ores. He feels a certain disappointment, though relieved not to have encountered monsters. He begins collecting some of the plants and thinks that perhaps the smell of his body is driving away any beast. This idea makes him happy, to the point of running through the forest with a smile. Further ahead, he sees the exit, but ends up falling directly into a valley. The fright is immediate, and in the midst of despair he utters several words related to flight, in an attempt to activate some spell. When he finally says glide, an aura of light surrounds his body and makes him land softly on the ground. Soon he notices several symbols with the gold suit indicating the presence of ores. He takes a small pickaxe from his bag and begins mining. He finds silver, but no mithril. He tries the search magic again and discovers another ore vein, hidden deeper in the rocks. Suddenly, he feels the ground shaking. He decides to act quickly. He casts a fireball against the stone, breaking part of the formation, and collects some fragments of mithril. The amount, however, is disappointing. Ignoring the tremor, he continues exploring. It doesn't take long before he comes across an underground lake of crystal clear waters. Upon analyzing it, he realizes that this water is classified as SS rank, something extremely rare. Excited, he concludes that the liquid is infused with the mana of an ancestral dragon. Before he can act, a deep voice echoes through the cave, demanding to know who dared to invade that territory. Distracted, Takeru ignores it for a moment and thinks about how he could collect the water. As he approaches to drink, the surface of the lake stirs and a huge dragon emerges furiously, ordering him to stop despising it. Takeru watches in silence, feeling the weight of the creature's gaze. Then, calmly, he bows and apologizes for having entered its home without permission. The dragon, noticing his composure, comments that Takeru has an impressive cold blood and questions who he really is. Takeru replies by stating his name and affirming that he is human. The dragon shows surprise. It had never seen anyone of that race with such a large amount of mana in their body. It explains that it was precisely Takeru's energy that awakened it from a deep sleep. Without understanding, Takeru just listens, until the dragon reveals that his mana is comparable to that of an ancestral creature. At that moment, Takeru understands who was before him. The dragon introduces itself as Voldius. The young man asks if he can call him Vol-san, and the creature accepts. Voldius then asks a favor. He believes that Takeru's pure power can help bring his son back to life. He tells him that the stagnant and corrupted mana of the cave prevents his heir's egg from hatching. To prove that he doesn't want anything for free, he makes magical mithril ores emerge from the water. Impressed, Takeru asks about the egg, and Voldius makes a gigantic black egg rise from the water. The dragon gives the egg to Takeru, who places his ear against it and hears a faint heartbeat coming from inside. He wonders how he could awaken it, and Voldius explains that it is enough to pour his mana over the egg, the same way he conjured the light magic. Takeru channels energy and warms the shell, but quickly realizes that his mana is being endlessly drained. Voldius laughs, as if he had planned it all along. Takeru realizes he has fallen into a trap. Exhausted, his vision darkens, and he feels as if he is sinking into the water, about to die once again. At that moment, an unfamiliar voice scolds him for his recklessness. A mysterious man appears before him and comments that normally, when someone encounters a dragon, they faint or flee desperately to survive. But Takeru was different, and that was already altering the laws of the world. The young man does not understand what he means. The man continues, explaining that he has been manipulating the world of Madeus for hundreds of thousands of years. And since Takeru's arrival, waves have spread everywhere, something that bothers him. For this reason, he decides to reduce a little the exaggerated blessings that the solar system manager had granted. Before disappearing, he reminds Takeru that he himself had asked for an adorable partner. As the young man's vision darkens again, the man adds that a small setback can be useful for him. When Takeru awakens, he hears the sound of chirping. For a moment he thinks it is Voldius, but upon using his light magic, he finds a small dragon that jumps onto his face. Voldius asks Takeru to give the hatchling a name. Confused, he questions whether it shouldn't be Voldius himself to name his son, since he is the father. The dragon explains that the hatchling already has a true name, but wishes for Takeru to give him a pseudonym. After much reflection, Takeru decides to call him B, inspired by the word black. Happy with the choice, the little dragon begins licking Takeru's face. Voldius, satisfied, calls the hatchling Black Voldius and praises the chosen name. Then, the larger dragon states that his son must explore the world alongside Takeru. The young man asks if Voldius really trusts his offspring to someone he has just met. The dragon replies that Takeru is even more powerful than himself, and that is why he feels confident in letting him take care of B. Before diving back into the depths of the lake, Voldius places something inside Takeru's magic bag. To be sure, Takeru asks B if he would like to accompany him on a material gathering adventure. The little dragon agrees enthusiastically. Before leaving, Takeru casts a cleaning spell on B to remove the bad smell, preparing him for the journey they were about to begin. After some time, Takeru left the cave with B. The sky was already darkening, and he concluded that traveling at night wouldn't be a good idea. With his stomach growling, he decided to set up camp right there. While preparing to eat, he noticed that Voldius had connected his magic bag to the mystical lake, allowing B to drink and feed whenever he wanted. B drank the water excitedly and asked for more. Takeru filled another cup, but the little dragon unexpectedly offered the drink to him. Takeru accepted the gesture and tasted some of the magical water. Then, he placed a few magic stones around and cast a protective barrier. He remembered something he had read in the encyclopedia he bought at Jerome's shop. Magic stones were considered rare and valuable resources. Even so, since he could create them with his own magic, Takeru allowed himself to use them freely, even as fuel for cooking. He prepared a piece of meat and some stew. Although it was the same meal as before, he felt excited, thinking it tasted amazing and imagining he could eat that dish many more times. When he saw B drooling because of the smell of meat, Takeru worried that the little one might get sick from unfamiliar food. Still, he decided to offer a little to test. B jumped in so eagerly that he ended up burning his mouth, and Takeru quickly blew on the plate to cool it down. Soon, the tiny dragon began enjoying the stew happily. When he saw Bee lying down after eating, Takeru felt a great sense of relief. It was good to know that his companion could share the same food and didn't have to live only on magical water. Then he asked if Bee ever felt lonely being away from his parents. In response, Bee simply hugged him, showing that he was happy by his side. Smiling, Takeru opened the status window to check Bee's information. Even though he was young, the dragon was already rank B and possessed several elemental abilities: fire, water, wind, thunder, light, and darkness, in addition to carrying the blessing of the ancestral dragon. Impressed, Takeru thought that despite such great power, B was still just a child who needed care. He warned the little one that even if he was stronger, he shouldn't take any unnecessary risks. But before he could finish the sentence, B had already fallen asleep. Watching the baby dragon sleep, Takeru wondered if the manager of the solar system had really given him that dragon as a partner on purpose. The next morning, Takeru climbed a mountain to return to the forest and was surprised to see that the place didn't look nearly as dark as it had during the night. He thought it wasn't worth worrying so much about such details since he was in another world. Using his search ability, he found several herbs he didn't recognize. But suddenly, Bee came flying back, looking frightened. Takeru immediately activated his monster detection skill and sensed several nearby. He remembered that before, monsters avoided him because of his scent and wondered if that smell had faded. Thinking it was a good opportunity to get rare materials, he prepared for battle. A rank C rock hawk appeared behind him, and Takeru found it rather cute compared to Valdius. When he realized that the creature's meat was valuable and delicious, he decided to get that rare flying ingredient. The hawk lunged at him, but Takeru raised a shield and launched ice needles, defeating the monster in a single blow. Bee then pointed to the other side, warning him about approaching wolves. By now, Takeru no longer saw monsters, he saw ingredients. Using magic, he increased his speed and lightened his body, becoming incredibly fast. He rushed toward the beasts, punching and dodging with ease, feeling grateful for his long legs. After defeating them all, he gathered the meat and materials that dropped, but noticed more creatures were coming. Not wanting to spend the entire day fighting, he began thinking of a way to escape. At that moment, Bee grabbed him and tried to fly. Takeru doubted the little one could do it, but to his surprise, Bee managed to lift him off the ground with effort. To help, Takeru further reduced his weight with magic, and the two soared through the skies. Takeru warned that Bee had climbed too high, and the little dragon accidentally let go of him. Takeru fell but woke up shortly after with Bee licking his face. He realized the little one had carried him out of the forest and was amazed by his speed. He thanked him for the help, asking not to overdo it. Bee didn't quite understand, so Takeru said he would count on him again if something happened. Excited, Bee jumped to hug him but hit him too hard. After that, the two continued their journey toward the village. According to Takeru's search ability, Tormy village was a day's walk away. Along the way, Bee asked about the branch Takeru was holding. He explained that he found it in his magic bag, and that, according to its status, it was a branch of Yggdrasil, classified as rank SS, part of the legendary tree that was now dormant. Suddenly, Bee blew mana over the branch, awakening its power and transforming it into a staff. Takeru panicked, not wanting to look like a mage and draw unnecessary attention. Before he could think of what to do, he heard a growl coming from the forest. He told Bee to stay alert, but the little dragon flew straight toward the sound. Takeru ran after him, worried, and when he caught up, he found a young elf lying on the ground. He imagined she had been attacked by a monster, but she explained that wasn't the case. Suddenly, he heard her stomach growl and realized that the roar he'd heard earlier wasn't from a monster, but from the elf's stomach she hadn't eaten in 3 days. Asking for some water, the elf received a canteen from Takeru, drank with relief, and thanked him. Though she was still hungry, he then offered her a sandwich, which she accepted happily. She was so hungry that the simple taste of bread and filling felt heavenly. Takeru commented that any food becomes delicious when someone is starving. Then he asked why she hadn't brought anything to eat, since the village wasn't that far away. The girl replied that she was in a hurry. Takeru said that even so, no one should go out unprepared. Even those who aren't adventurers don't make the mistake of leaving without food and water. Embarrassed, the elf came closer, and Takeru noticed a strong smell coming from her. Disappointed, he remarked that he expected elves to have the fresh scent of spring, but she smelled like fertilizer. The girl explained that she had been camping for several days and couldn't help it. Soon after, she hurriedly stood up, said she needed to go, and ran off into the forest. After the elf left, Takeru continued collecting materials along the path leading to the village. Once they exited the forest, B noticed something. Looking in the same direction, Takeru saw a carriage approaching on the road. He was impressed to see that the vehicle was pulled by a unicorn horse of rank E. The coachman, an elderly man, asked what Takeru was doing in that area. Takeru calmly replied that he was heading to the village of Tormy. The old man looked at him with curiosity and asked if he was a mage. Smiling awkwardly, Takeru explained that he was just a collector. The man was amazed, saying it had been a long time since he had met someone with that profession. He mentioned that he was also heading to Tormy. Kindly, the old man offered him a ride, but Takeru initially refused, saying he was too big and didn't want to cause trouble. The children in the carriage laughed at the comment, finding his size amusing. Even so, the old man insisted, and Takeru eventually accepted the invitation. During the trip, he kept wondering why all the children in this world seemed to like him so much. But he didn't mind after all. That made the adults more comfortable around him too. The old man, amused, commented that Takeru's size hadn't been a problem for the carriage, but Takeru still apologized for taking up so much space. The coachman explained that in Tormy there was an important rule. Everyone must help each other. Takeru, a bit skeptical, asked what they would do if he turned out to be a disguised bandit. One of the boys laughed and said he was lying because if he were dangerous, the carriage's magic item would have already activated. The woman explained that the artifact glows when someone with ill intentions is nearby. Takeru found the idea interesting and thought that maybe he could make something similar. He then introduced himself, and the woman said her name was Eliza. Her children were Yunin and Kain, and the old coachman introduced himself as Porin. Suddenly, B began making small sounds, and the children noticed immediately. Curious, they asked Takeru what that noise was. He said it came from his small companion, but hesitated a little, unsure how they would react upon seeing him. Eliza, however, reassured Takeru, saying it was common for adventurers to travel with tamed monsters. With that, he decided to introduce B. As soon as the little dragon appeared, the children were enchanted. Porin and Eliza, however, were astonished, since it was extremely rare to see a dragon up close. To avoid drawing attention, Takeru quickly covered it up by saying that B was just an ordinary black dragon, not mentioning that he was actually an ancestral dragon hatchling. Curious, Porin asked if he was a dragon knight. Takeru explained that he wasn't, he had simply found an egg and managed to hatch it by chance. That revelation left the group even more surprised, wanting to understand better. Takeru asked how rare dragons were in that world, and Eliza replied that dragon knights were already extremely uncommon, but a true dragon was nearly impossible to find. Hearing that, Takeru remembered the games from his old world, where dragon knights were always legendary figures, and thought that he would love to meet one for real someday. When night fell, the group decided to camp. Takeru created a security barrier with magic stones to keep monsters away. Porin felt relieved, saying that everyone was safe now. Takeru added that B would warn them if anything approached. He offered to prepare dinner, and when the food was ready, the aroma filled the camp. As soon as they tasted it, everyone was amazed by the flavor. Porin was even moved, saying that after so many days eating only dried meat on the road, this was a real feast. Jokingly, the old man declared that Takeru wasn't just a collector, but a taste magician, and everyone burst out laughing. After the meal, Porin took out a guitar and started playing while Eliza sang a soft song. The children played around Takeru and B, and he let himself be carried away by that simple, joyful moment, something he had never experienced in his old world. For the first time since arriving in that world, he felt like he could truly laugh. When it was time to sleep, Takeru lay down and looked up at the sky full of stars. In silence, he felt deeply grateful to be there, sharing such simple and sincere moments. The next morning, Takeru woke up early to perform maintenance on his scissors. Porin told him that they would continue their journey right after breakfast, and the boy took the chance to ask if he could drive the wagon. So, after finishing breakfast, Takeru took the reins. He enjoyed the ride, admiring the scenery and the fact that he was driving a wagon pulled by a unicorn, something he never imagined experiencing, not even in his wildest dreams. Before long, they could see the village of Tormy in the distance. Upon arriving, Takeru said goodbye to Porin and his family, thanking them for the ride and the company during the trip. Marlowe commented that Porin's return marked the beginning of spring. Curious, Takeru asked what he did during the rest of the year. Marlowe explained that, in winter, Porin traveled to warmer regions and survived by weaving to make a living. When he returned, it was a sign that spring had arrived. However, those trips were harsh, unable to hunt. They barely found food and supplies to survive. Takeru then realized that was probably why Porin had cried when eating his food that day. Comparing his own life to that of Porin's family, he understood how lucky he was to have skills that helped him gather materials. After that, Takeru went to Jerome's shop to deliver the materials he had collected. Among the mithril ore the old man had requested, he intentionally slipped in a small fragment of magical mithril, just to see the blacksmith's reaction. Jerome's eyes widened as he asked what that strange thing was that the boy had brought. His instincts told him it wasn't an ordinary ore, it looked like magical mithril, something he only knew from ancient legends. Takeru was surprised to learn that the ore was so rare and valuable. Jerome explained that magical mithril was a mass of concentrated mana and that even a small fragment could replace the magic stones used throughout the entire kingdom. Takeru had no idea that the material was that powerful and tried to play it off, saying he had just found it by chance. Still, the old man believed that the fact Takeru had found and recognized such a mineral proved he was both lucky and skilled qualities of a talented person. However, Jerome also thought the boy lacked common sense, so he recommended that Takeru go to Belcim, a large city with an adventurer's guild. There, he could learn more about the world and mature a bit. He added that if Takeru became famous and spoke well of Tormy, it would help the village prosper. Although he had no plans of becoming famous, Takeru was excited about the idea of visiting a big city. Later, at the inn, he looked for information about the Adventurers Guild in one of the available books. Ever since being sent to that new world, he had wanted to see different places and live new experiences, and becoming an adventurer seemed like the right path, especially since he could earn some money. Even so, he decided to stay in Tormy a little longer before leaving. The next day, he took the rock hawk to be processed and turned into ingredients. That night, he joined a festival in the village and had a great time. In the following days, he kept his routine of gathering materials. One day before his departure to Belcim, Takeru stopped by a shop to restock the ingredients he needed. The woman in charge handed him powdered broth made from the rock hawk's bones, along with various other supplies. She mentioned that everyone in the village would miss him the next day and warned him that it would take about a month to reach Belcim, so she gave him several bags of food for the journey. He thanked her for the kind gesture and returned to the inn. Thinking about how he could repay all the hospitality he had received, Takeru had an idea. He wanted to do something special for everyone in the village. He took a lantern and the magical mithril fragment, using magic to fuse them. Even without knowing if it would work, he focused carefully and achieved exactly the result he had imagined. The next morning, Takeru said goodbye to everyone in the village and told Marlowe that he had created a special magical tool. He explained that the item projected a protective barrier around the entire village, preventing anyone with ill intent from entering. Marlowe asked if he was sure he wanted to leave something so valuable behind, and Takeru confirmed that he did. It was his way of thanking them for all their kindness and hospitality. Jerome, observing the lantern, immediately realized that Takeru had used the magical mithril ore to create it. But before he could say anything, the boy was already running off, smiling and waving goodbye, not giving anyone a chance to return the gift. Some time later, on the road to Belcim, Takeru came across a giant crab. However, he didn't see it as a threat, rather as an opportunity, since to him, monsters were ingredients. He was about to fight when B attacked first. letting out a powerful sound that instantly knocked the crab down. Takeru was impressed by his partner's strength, but the calm didn't last long. 2 more crabs appeared and surrounded them. The boy was confident, thinking crabs could only move sideways, but he was caught off guard when both of them charged straight at him. Before he could react, B lifted him with its claws, and the 2 monsters collided with each other, falling unconscious. However, the first crab, the one that had been knocked out earlier, got back up. Without hesitation, Takeru grabbed his staff and, with a firm swing, struck the creature like a professional baseball player. This time, the result was final game over for the crab. When night came, Takeru used hardening magic on his hands and began cutting the monster's legs, preparing an improvised dinner. He put everything in the pot, added salt, and waited for it to cook. The aroma quickly spread, and when they tasted it, both he and B were delighted by the flavor. The experience made him even more excited about traveling the world and trying different foods from each region. The next morning, they finally arrived at the commercial city of Belcim. There was a long inspection line to enter, and Takeru decided to use magic to disguise his magic bag. When his turn came, he asked B to hide. During the inspection, the guard discovered that he was a material collector and asked if he was there to sell something. Takeru replied that his goal was to visit the Adventurers Guild. The inspector smiled, saying he figured as much, since Belcim was known for being the center of trade and adventure. Before letting him through, the guard explained that he needed to use an item called avarice, which could determine whether a visitor posed any kind of threat. At the end of the test, he concluded that everything was fine. Curious, Takeru activated his scanning ability to see what the inspector was seeing and was surprised to notice that his stats looked completely normal. None of the extravagant skills granted to him by the solar system manager appeared there. The inspector only found it odd when he noticed something called Blessing of the Dragon and asked what it meant, not wanting to reveal that he had received it from Voldius, an ancient dragon. Takeru asked B to come out of hiding and explained that it was probably something related to his partner. The man then asked him to put some kind of accessory on the dragon to confirm that they were companions. Takeru placed the bracelet he had received from the children in Tormy, and the inspector nodded, saying he would register the dragon's presence with the mayor, but that it wouldn't cause any trouble. One of the staff members explained that he only needed to follow the main road to reach the Adventurers Guild. Takeru thanked them and went on his way. Not long after, he found the large guild building. Upon entering, he was amazed by the variety of people and races. He was soon approached by the receptionist, Ariana, who led him to a table to complete his registration. She asked him to fill out his name and occupation on a form. That was when Takeru noticed something curious. He could understand the people's language, but had never tried writing it. Even so, he wrote normally and was fascinated when he saw the letters automatically change into that world's script. With the form in hand, Ariana asked if he had any combat experience. Takeru said yes, explaining that he had defeated a huge bird, some wolves, and even giant crabs. The girl asked if he could prove it. Takeru warned her that his example was a bit large and asked if he could take it out right there. Ariana, not really understanding, agreed. Then, he pulled an entire giant crab out of his magic bag. The receptionist screamed and ran off, completely terrified. A demi-human, who seemed to be the guild master, approached wanting to know what was going on. Takeru calmly explained, and the man asked if he had an item box. The boy confirmed, saying he had received it as a gift. The master then used an ocular ability to analyze Takeru and confirmed he was telling the truth, calling him Blue. Confused, Takeru asked what that meant. The man apologized, explaining that he had used an avarice spell without asking permission. His version of the ability could read a person's nature, and the blue hue indicated that he wasn't involved in anything dangerous. Next, the master invited him to have the crab's shell evaluated and paid for. But Takeru explained that he wasn't there to sell it, he wanted to eat the crab. The comment left everyone shocked. The demi-human simply laughed and told them to continue the registration. He asked if Takeru had any party members, and when the boy introduced B, everyone in the guild was stunned to realize that B was a dragon. The commotion was so great that several people started whispering, and even considering inviting him to their groups. Seeing that things were getting out of control, Ariana quickly took him to a nearby room. There, she completed his registration, and Takeru officially became an adventurer. The receptionist handed him a bracelet and explained that all beginners started at rank F. B, looking at the accessory, was excited to see that they now wore matching bracelets. Some time later, Takeru went to the home of the family of the adventurer he had found dead near the village of Tormy. He offered a few words of comfort to the family, and when he noticed the old man coughing right in front of him, Takeru remembered what the inspection guard had mentioned. Beluria Fend, the adventurer in question, had been taking on jobs to pay for his father's medicine. At first, Takeru only planned to deliver Beluria's belongings, but upon seeing the man's condition, he decided to help in any way he could. After that, he went to the guild to sell the materials he had gathered. The receptionist admitted he had never seen materials of such high quality, commenting that several clients were specifically requesting Takeru's work. At that moment, Ariana appeared, carrying several missions that had been requested for him. Takeru explained that he could take on some of them, but not all. The girl thanked him and left to inform the clients. Later, Takeru went to take a bath with B. He remembered it had already been a month since they arrived in Belcim. The first time they came to this bath, the water was completely dirty, but he had managed to purify it with his magic. Now, that place had become a perfect refuge to ease the exhaustion of daily life. While he was relaxing, a man named Clay also appeared to treat some old scars that had worsened. He mentioned hearing that Takeru had healed a sick man in the slums, which surprised him since he didn't know the boy had healing abilities. Takeru remembered the moment he healed Beluria's father, knowing it was the least he could do for the family. Takeru explained to Clay that he had merely copied a spell he had seen someone use. Clay noted that the boy truly was kind, since he hadn't even charged for his work, and Takeru became worried, wondering if the healers who charged for their services might have gotten angry with him. Clay laughed and asked if Takeru hadn't received a notice to move up in rank. The boy replied that he was satisfied with his current position. Clay warned him that if he kept this up, he would attract even more attention. Then, Clay stood up and left. The scene shifted to Takeru receiving his payment from the guild receptionist. He remembered that there had already been several requests for him to be promoted, but he kept refusing, believing that a higher rank would only bring more problems. All he wanted was to live peacefully. At that moment, an adventurer entered the guild announcing that goblins were attacking. The guild master ordered all adventurers to gather and instructed Muesli to call Clay, the A-rank adventurer known as the Dragon King. Takeru tried to slip away quietly, since he was only rank F, but the guild master called him to help. Soon after, several adventurers had gathered. The man explained the mission. They couldn't allow the goblins to cross the bridge over the Zhow River. Two beastmen adventurers looked down on Takeru with disdain, mocking him for being rank F and telling him to be careful not to get in the way. The guild master approached Takeru and asked if he was the collector Grit had praised. The boy confirmed. The man commented that it was rare for Grit to praise anyone that much and was impressed, since Takeru was the first person who didn't show fear in his presence. Before walking away, he told the boy to protect whatever was important to him and then left, calling Diego and Oraldo. Muesli commented that Takeru must really be impressive, since the guild master had decided to send him to the battlefield despite being only rank F. Some time later, they positioned themselves near the battle site. Muesli stayed close to Takeru, clearly scared even of birds. He tried to calm her down, explaining that they were at the rear, where they couldn't even see the enemies. He told her she needed to stay calm, as her role would be to use healing magic and help those who were injured. Takeru emphasized that feeling afraid was natural, and that what mattered was doing their best to survive and help others with their magic. After hearing this, Muesli felt more confident about helping however she could. Clay approached and praised Takeru for managing to calm the girl down. The boy commented that he thought Clay would be on the front lines, but Clay explained that his scars made movement difficult. Takeru asked if that was because of the deep scars on Clay's back. The man, looking a bit downcast, asked if the boy didn't think those marks were a shame for a warrior, since everyone who saw them assumed he had tried to flee from an enemy. Takeru said he knew those scars existed because Clay had protected someone. He had been gravely wounded but was still alive. As long as he lived, he could continue protecting others. Those words encouraged Clay. Soon, they heard the alarm that the enemies had managed to break through the front line. Even though he wasn't in full condition, Clay said he would head to the front, declaring that even if his body gave out, he would still protect Takeru. The boy watched Muesli, who, even though she was nervous, was tending to an injured person. And he remembered the words of the guild master about protecting whoever you wished to protect. Feeling determined, Takeru took his staff from his magic pouch and raised a powerful barrier. Then, he advanced to the front lines. Meanwhile, the battle was growing more intense. Despite the adventurers' strength, the enemies were many, and if they crossed the bridge, Belcim would be in danger. Takeru arrived, knocking down a goblin, and upon noticing the number of enemies, asked B to intervene. The little dragon responded by casting a large-scale spell, wiping out all the goblins in sight. The boy then turned to Diego and Oraldo and asked why they were staying so far back. Diego explained that the front line had collapsed due to the appearance of a powerful enemy, a goblin sergeant. They had only managed to escape thanks to Clay's help. Suddenly, it started to rain. Clay was fighting multiple enemies, but his scars made it difficult for him to move. When he was about to be struck, B intervened with his lightning magic, protecting him. Surprised, Clay asked what Takeru was doing there. The boy replied that he had come to help since Clay could barely move because of his scars. To emphasize his point, Takeru lightly patted Clay's back, making him cry out in pain. The goblin sergeant appeared and attacked them, but they managed to dodge. Clay decided to buy time so that Takeru could escape, but the boy refused to leave him to die and then asked if the scars on his back were important to him. Clay found the question strange at that moment, but replied that they weren't, calling those marks his disgrace. Takeru then said he would remove them. He took some magic water and poured it over Clay, reciting a healing spell. The effect went far beyond expectations. Clay not only recovered but also evolved. The water contained mana from an ancient dragon, and since Clay was a beastman of the dragon race, he absorbed that power in an extraordinary way. The goblin sergeant and all the other goblins tried to flee, but Clay defeated them in a matter of seconds. Soon, the guild master appeared, asking if Takeru had been responsible for unlocking Clay's potential. The boy confirmed. The master, knowing that wasn't all Takeru could do since he had heard reports of his actions on the battlefield, asked who he really was. Takeru replied that he was just an F-rank adventurer whose main skill was collecting materials. The master expressed doubt that it was only that but said it didn't matter, thanked him, and assured him that the guild would reward his help. Later that night, Clay went to Takeru's room seeking an explanation. Takeru was happy to see that he had recovered, but Clay said he wasn't normal, still feeling something hot burning inside him. Then, Takeru told the truth. He had used magic water from an ancient dragon he had found in an underground lake, the same dragon that was B's father or mother. Clay was shocked to learn that B was the child of an ancient dragon. He sat down and asked why Takeru had used that water on him. The boy explained that, since it was made of dragon mana, he believed it would speed up the healing if absorbed directly through the skin. Clay wanted to know if Takeru could also use advanced healing spells, but he said it was the same spell, as always the difference was how he imagined Clay's veins, nerves, and body components, which enhanced the effect. Clay was impressed and repeated the question about who Takeru really was. The boy hesitated, wondering if he should reveal where he came from. The manager of the solar system hadn't forbidden it, but Takeru feared it would cause a big commotion. Clay stood up and said he didn't need to tell if he didn't want to, apologizing before leaving. However, Takeru decided to trust him and revealed that he was someone from another world who had reincarnated into this one after his death. After some time explaining, even though it was hard to believe, Clay accepted the truth, especially since Takeru had turned him into a dragonute, their ancestral species. Clay was proud to take on that noble form, but was frightened, afraid of losing control and causing destruction. Takeru tried to calm him, assuring him that he would learn to control his power since there was no way to return to normal. Clay scolded him, saying that Takeru handled everything too casually, as if it were simple, and that he needed to learn more about that world. The next morning, Takeru went to the craftsman's district and stopped in front of a shop, telling B that he wanted to buy something. A Catwoman nearby asked if he had seen something that caught his attention. And so we finish the 4th episode of the anime, Sozai Seishuka no Isekai Ryakuki. If you want the continuation of the next episodes, leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep watching the upcoming videos. See you next time.